Hello, I'm Johnny Bravo. Today you're going under the musical influence of today's guest, Brian Belt, on Under the Influence with DJ Johnny Bravo. The reason why I invited Brian is because he used to work at a record store, and he also has vinyl that he's never played that is still in the wrapper. And I would always wonder if he ever played his vinyl, but he does play his vinyl. So Brian, tell me a little about your musical self.
Hey Johnny, how you doing this evening?
Pretty good. How you doing, Brian?
Doing good. Glad to help you out. As you mentioned, been listening to music for a long, long time here. A little bit of an older guy, a little bit older than yourself. Used to work at a record store back in the day, back in the 80s and early 90s, and been a real fan of music. I have all kind of broad range of taste in music, from anything from classic rock to heavy metal to a little bit of rap, just the older stuff, and some country and everything in between.
You said you worked at a record store back in the 80s. Where were you living back in the 80s? Where are you living now? How has that kind of impacted your whole experience with music?
The actual job at the good old record store was actually in the early 90s, so I would just say from, say, 91-ish to, say, 95, 96. And that was when I was living in San Antonio, Texas, and I worked for a now defunct record company called Sound Warehouse. Currently now, I'm on the East Coast, just like you, living life. Things have changed a little bit, but, music's still very important. And I try to go to as many shows as I can and still buying records and vinyl and CDs and what have you, and try to be involved in the music scene as much as I can. And as you mentioned, some things that just don't open, but it is what it is. At least I have a copy.
Yeah, you have a copy of, I think it's Pink Floyd, The Division Bell, that you haven't opened. I'm not sure what the other ones you haven't opened. And the other reason why I invited Brian on is because we are record store buddies. Even though he's down in the Virginia Beach area, I'm up in Richmond, Virginia. We're standing in line in record store day, his wife, my wife, and we're always kind of swapping lists. What do you need? What do you need? What do I need? What do you need? And if he can't find it, I can't find it, then sometimes we don't get it, but at least we're partnering up on that expense. And, I probably open most of mine. I know he probably keeps some of them sealed, but I know it's the thrill of the hunt with the vinyl for you.
Yeah, it's definitely the thrill of the hunt. I enjoy more of the collecting thing. I love listening to music, but between the vinyl that I have and then all the CDs I have, it's just a lot. It takes up a lot of space in the little room that I'm sitting in here. I'd probably say about, give or take, 1,000 or so physical CDs, about 700 to 900 albums. Some open, some not. And then to address the one Pink Floyd that you mentioned, that was a copy of the Division Bell that I did buy back in the day when I was working at the record store. And it's an original press. It's never been opened. Just never opened it for whatever reason. Just sitting there on the shelf. I did pick it up, and back in the day, I think I paid for it when no one wanted to buy vinyl. Early 90s, I think after my employee discount and all the discounts on it and clearance, I probably paid about $3 or $4 for the thing. It's completely sealed and in pristine shape. That's probably something that I'll never open, and I'll just sit on the shelf next to the brand new copy of the Division Bell that I bought recently. It's been expanded to 2 LPs versus the one original LP that's on the clear blue vinyl that was the big deal back in the day.
I've been up in the room. Brian showed me around all of his music and movies and paraphernalia that he's got hanging up, all the posters, some of the stuff probably that he got from his music store and other music stores. I'm interested, Brian, when did you first discover music?
I got into music as an early kid. Parents always played music in the early 70s as I was growing up. It was originally my dad playing some of the older stuff, The Doors, Hendrix, Deep Purple, and stuff like that on the old turntable. And then as the 70s progressed, it slowly moved into the disco era. And then when I was really about, I would say, in my 9, 10, 11 years old, early teens at the latest, right around middle school time, actually before middle school, probably 5th or 6th grade, for Christmas one year, I asked for a bunch of cassettes from the old parents, for a Christmas gift to stick in the stockings, and next thing I knew, I had whatever I had on my list. I asked for about 5 or 6 different cassettes. Lo and behold, there they were, and for whatever reason, at that point in time, I requested a copy of Zeppelin 4. I wanted a copy of the new Motley Crue album, Quiet Riot, and then in addition to that, I think they stuck something in from The Doors. And that was Christmas that year, and that was pretty damn cool, and I loved it ever since. And then once I went into middle school and high school and hang out with all the friends and buddies, the music experience just blossomed from there, and hanging out with the kids and trading music back and forth, making copies of tapes and going to concerts and exploring stuff. It was a great good time.
And those are some good records there. The Led Zeppelin 4 just celebrated the 50th anniversary. Just posted on Instagram today that the Motley Crue, Too Fast for Love, just celebrated 40 years. And then you had Quiet Ride in there. Those are some, and the Doors. The Doors are one of my faves. Love some Jim Morrison, read some books on Jim, and watched the movie, of course, back in the 90s with Val Kilmer. So, God, that's a good list there for Christmas, man.
Yeah, definitely so. And the more we refer back to the old days in the 80s and the 90s, the older I feel. But yeah, music keeps me young.
What is the first song that comes to mind that, is on your ear lids that you might have listened to back in the day?
Trying to think of, one of the first songs I heard. It probably had to be some of the early Beatles stuff that my mom used to play, back in the early 70s. Nothing really stands out. The Beatles were always on, and then some of the 60s and 70s type music that they were growing up with. So that was always on the music scene in our house.
Back in the 70s, I guess the album-oriented rock was a big format back then. So that, I guess that quiet music, the soft rock, was a big thing. I remember being at my babysitter's house listening to the radio, or she was listening to the radio, and a lot of that music would be on the Beatles and stuff like that in the background. So you experienced some of the same things with your mom and your parents, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're going to take a break, so hang on. We'll be right back. We are back. I'm Johnny Bravo. You're going under the musical influence of today's guest, Brian Belt, on Under the Influence with DJ Johnny Bravo. Brian, let's talk about girlfriends. We want to talk about, what would be that song that you would send out for that long-distance dedication?
I just have to play that one safe. You're talking about girlfriends and everything else and, being married and all that. You can't go too far back. So I just have to play that safe. Just mention, just a song that, that serves a special place in my heart for me and my wife. And that would have to be the Turtles, So Happy Together. It was one of those days where, we were starting to date early in the time frame, and she sent me a card. I sent her a card, and just happened to be that we both sent similar Hallmark cards to each other halfway across the country. Both of them had the musical theme with So Happy Together. That's been our song, and we're going to stick with that.
Good man there. If you're married and, you start talking about girlfriends, it might get you in trouble.
About those past, and, can't do that. Just a present, right?
Just a present. You got to stick with it. The wife is the one that's in charge. You want to stay married and keep your record or collection, that one room in the house.
She allows me to spend the money on the vinyl. So, yes, you got to keep her happy. You're absolutely correct, Johnny.
Exactly correct. Did you guys dance to that song at your wedding?
Yes, we did. We did play that, plus a lot of other cool stuff at our wedding, including some classic stuff like Sinatra, and we closed out the night with Thriller by Michael Jackson.
I know that she has a place in her heart for some Frank Sinatra. I do remember that.
Absolutely.
Her and my wife are both friends. They worked together and did some other things together, and she was actually in our wedding. So I know that she likes some Frank Sinatra. I think I even recorded some of her dad's CD collection of Frank Sinatra, some of his greatest hits that he had a copy of.
Oh, that's a good deal.
And we've talked about Michael Jackson on this show before. So you said that you danced a Thriller. Is that what it was?
Yeah, the last song of the night for our wedding, when everyone's all nice and, how do we say that, inebriated? We can use the word inebriated. Yeah, we all decided to do the line dance with Thriller, and people throwing their arms to the left and the right and trying to do the scary, spooky stuff. It was a night to behold. It was pretty cool. All being led off by her dad. So he's a wonderful guy.
I don't know if my wife, I know we were there, but I'm not sure if we remember seeing that, if we left early or not. That would have been great. I don't know if you got a video of that, but I think I might pay to see her dad doing the Thriller dance.
Yep, it's there somewhere. We will turn that up one day.
That sounds like a plan. What's the first concert that you went to, or maybe the first concert that you remember going to?
I've seen many, many concerts concerts, but the very first one that sticks out, there's actually two. These are both back when I was, my dad used to be in the Air Force way back in the day when we lived in Hawaii. First couple of concerts I remember seeing, the first was at the Aloha Stadium. It was a triple bill. It was Aerosmith, Run DMC, and Stevie Ray Vaughan. That was a killer show. First indoor show that I saw was Dio on the Sacred Heart tour with Yngwie Malmsteen opening up. That was killer as well. What really sticks out about that second show is that we were, young kids, early high school. We got there so early in the day before the show. The show was probably 8 o'clock, give or take. We were there at the venue at noon, just hanging out, just trolling around like scamps that we were. We hooked up with the local DJ there at the radio station. Next thing we knew, he said, meet me here after the show at this time, at this gate, and I'll get you backstage. And that happened, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
So you were backstage hanging out with Dio?
Dio and Yngwie Malmsteen, yes, sir.
Man, did you get all their autographs, or did you have anything for them to sign?
I had a tour book that had a couple of members from the Dio band back in the day signed. I didn't get a chance to meet Ronnie that night, but I did meet him, about a decade later. One of the cool things was that I did get to meet Yngwie Malmsteen way back in the day when he was in his early 20s, and that was pretty cool.
Do you still have that book from the show?
Yeah, still autographed, still holding on to it.
Now, you've been around, all across the United States. Where else have you seen some killer shows?
I've seen shows in Hawaii, a lot of shows in Texas. I've seen shows here on the East Coast, whether it's here locally in Virginia Beach, up to D.C. area. That's pretty much the extent of it. And a few concerts in Northern California when I was finishing up high school. Any
shows from any of those areas that stick out to you besides the two that you mentioned?
One of the coolest shows that I've ever seen. Well, actually, two shows. The first and the one that sticks out the most was Pink Floyd in San Antonio. When I got a chance to see the Vision Bell tour, they came by and they played the Alamo Dome. It was completely sold out. It was amazing. Start to finish, completely sold out show. Light show, amazing. Everything amazing. They even flew in a blimp for promotional purposes with the Pink Floyd logo on the side. And then roughly 6 months later, same venue, the Rolling Stones came and played. And they played on the, what tour was that? It slips my mind right now. But it was right there in the 84-85 time range. I want to say it was Voodoo Lounge. That's what it was, Voodoo Lounge tour. Those two shows back-to-back with those two huge, iconic bands were amazing. Of course, shortly thereafter, that was, we all knew that was the last Pink Floyd show ever, last tour, and that was it.
Yeah, now I've never seen all of Pink Floyd, but I have seen Roger Waters a couple times up in Philly, and he puts on a really good show, really good light show. The one time we saw it was the whole Wall tour, and the next time we saw him, it was the Us Versus Them tour. He had the light show making the symbol from Dark Side of the Moon.
Never seen Roger Waters by himself. I do like a lot of his solo work. If you are not familiar, if you haven't seen it or heard it yet, Nick Mason, the drummer from Pink Floyd, he has like a little side band, Nick Mason's Saucer Full of Secrets. And over the last couple of years, they put out some Record Store Day stuff, and they have a full-blown live album. And that live album basically recreates I would say the first and second Pink Floyd albums live in almost their entirety. And some very rare early takes, Syd Barrett type stuff. And the way that is presented on that vinyl is just amazing. If you haven't heard it, or if your wife hasn't heard it and picked it up, definitely something to pick up. A must for any Pink Floyd fan out there.
Yeah, I have heard of that, and I think he was touring overseas, and I think he's bringing that tour to North America in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
If that happens, I'd love to see it. Hopefully it'll come by somewhere close and not be too expensive, but it'd be wonderful to see, because that vinyl is phenomenal. It's one of the best things I've heard in the last 2-3 years.
I've seen Roger Waters, but I'd like to see, his compatriot there playing the guitar, as well. I've never seen him live, but, he was out in Pompeii and did a show that just looked amazing with his guitar work. So I'd like to kind of, complete the bookends on that.
I have a bootleg copy of a DVD performance from that Live 8 show where they did a brief reunion for about 3 or 4 songs. That is pretty cool. So if you haven't seen that, I will definitely share that with you one day so you can enjoy that as well. I never got a chance to see Roger Waters with Floyd or Waters by himself. On the bucket list, hopefully one day, but I would really like to see them mend fences and be back together, but that'll probably never ever happen.
I don't know if it would either. They did a really good show for The Wall, and when The Wall was being torn down. I have a copy of that. I think was a Record Store Day purchase that it just gives you chills. The hair stands up on your arms because they're actually doing The Wall and the wall is being torn down and they're saying, tear down the wall, and they're tearing it down. I mean, that's just got to be so amazing to have seen that show.
Absolutely.
And I've seen the Rolling Stones. This was, a couple years ago, I think 2015 on the Zip Code tour. So you got me beat by a couple years. But if you get a chance to not only see, Roger Waters or, the Rolling Stones or, even Gilmore, you need to go and check those shows out. Nick Mason too. I mean, that just sounds like that would be something awesome to witness. But the Rolling Stones, when I saw them, it was just like every single solitary act that I've ever seen emulated the Stones. I mean, like you talk about that Motley Crue record. I mean, they have a couple of albums that have just homage to the Rolling Stones, Michael Jackson, just all these different artists that emulate Mick Jagger and the band. And it's just how many years they've been doing it, and they're still doing it. They're still touring, and it's just amazing. And you got to put it on your bucket list to go see the Stones as well.
Well, I'm going to throw this out to you, my friend. Next time that you are accumulating these wonderful tickets to all these wonderful venues, and whether it's here, there, or everywhere, invite your buddy here, Brian, and his wife, and we'll definitely go out with you and your wife and your daughter and whoever else is going. We'll make all this stuff happen. To go to D.C. with you or to Charlotte or wherever we need to go to make some of this stuff happen.
Well, that definitely sounds like a deal. That Roger Waters show, we took the whole family, all four of us, my son, my daughter, my wife, and I went, and it was $500 for the ticket, but it was worth every penny of it. And the Stones tickets, I think, for two back in 2015 was like $225, but that was worth every penny too. So some of them, like the Stones tour, I went on late. The Pink Floyd tour, we actually did, plan that one. And we even sent some pictures to your wife, being that she's, she likes that other football team that we won't speak of. And I sent her some picture from Philly of that particular football team.
Well, that brings up another bone of contention with me. You mentioned these high ticket prices and everything else. It's just where we're at with everything in music. Way back in the day when I started seeing shows in the early to mid 80s and everything else, we all know that everything was driven by album sales, whether it was LP, cassette tape, vinyl, whatever it was, everything was driven by album sales. The tours that came by, you could see, so-and-so or whoever else headline naming bands. I remember buying tickets for $12 a night, $20 a night. When I finally got into the early to mid 90s, when Pink Floyd came by and the Stones came by, and then they said, hey, you need to pay $100 a piece for a ticket. It was just like, wow, I need to pay how much? 3 weeks ago, I was only paying $20. But when we think about it, the whole thing with the new generation and everything being digital and people just downloading and transferring files and just listening to stuff on whatever service you have, Spotify, whatever it is, not driving any revenue to the actual artists. And in order for the artists to be able to survive and make new albums and new records, they have to charge you $200 to $500 a show, depending on who it is, just to be able to get by and get all this touring done. It's a double-edged sword. That's one of the reasons why I love to buy vinyl and support the artists that way. And it's pretty amazing to know that vinyl sales now are exceeding CD sales. Things are starting to come full circle.
It all started with the Napster. People were downloading those files illegally, and Metallica got all upset about it and raised a fuss, and Tom Petty back in the day raised a fuss with them raising the record prices from $7.99 to like $9.99 or those type of things. And, now with streaming, a lot of people don't realize they want to go see these shows, but these bands are fronting. They have to pay the people that are opening up. They have to pay the people that are breaking down. They have to pay, the bands that are in the middle. Like if they have 2 or 3 bands, they're paying all of that. The record company will pay it, but basically they got to pay them back. So if they're not getting album sales, you're right. The ticket prices are going to go up, or the merchandise is going to go up. And, we are kind of caught in the crosshairs because we want to do it all. We want to get the music, and then we want to support the local artist or the national artist or whoever it is and go see them. And we want to wear the T-shirt that we went to the show. But by the time you go, and then if you have to travel, like I've talked on the show several times about Richmond not having any venues, we just went up to Boston to see the 21 Pilots, my daughter and I, when we took a train there and back, hotel, and then we paid for the tickets and then the T-shirts and, all that
over
stuff.
$1,000.
Yeah. I mean, it's just outrageous. And I mean, I want to support them, but it's like getting to be where it's too much to be able to even just go to a show. Cause we used to go to shows, $10, $15, $20 a pop, get a T-shirt for 10 or $15. And now it's, triple that.
Yeah. Back in my concert heyday in the early 90s, from say 90 through 95, I was literally at concerts, whether it was a major venue like the Alamo Dome or the Spurs Arena or wherever I was, or even a small club. I was out seeing shows 3-4 nights a week. And it wasn't uncommon to see shows back to back to back with all these different artists coming through and being able to afford it. But that was way back in the day when concert tickets were $15 to $30 a piece. And if it was a club show, it was only $10 to get in, and you could afford it. But now with the concert prices being, $125 plus a ticket if you want a reserved seat, let alone if you want a gold section seat or something, VIP, you have to very much pick and choose what you can do. So, I'm very supportive of smaller venues like the Norva and the National up there in Richmond and stuff like that. Those are still relatively easy to access type venues at $40 to $50 a person to see a show. But definitely when you're talking about a major national act coming through, especially in a large coliseum somewhere, you definitely have to pick and choose where you're going to go and who you're going to see.
You do have some other venues like the Beacon Theater in Hopewell, and you have the Virginia Beach Amphitheater. But I will tell you a way to get around it, and that is if you are a fan of the band and you follow them and get their emails, they will send you an email for pre-sales, and that's how you can get around the big ticket sales, because we did manage to do that with 21 Pilots and got tickets for like $65 or $75, when after they go on that sale, they're going for twice of that amount. So if you do follow any bands, follow their emails, get on their list, and you can get those concert tickets at a lesser price. And then you can also use those apps too, where you can get like last minute seats at shows as well, that maybe if they don't sell out, because there's you're right by some venues there in Virginia Beach. I would normally have to drive down, but I've seen where I could go see like a 311 show or something like that last minute, and the ticket prices aren't that expensive.
Yep, I definitely agree with that, and I definitely agree and support artists that like to sell their tickets. When they're selling them, that you have to purchase it with a credit card and show that credit card when you get in, that way to prevent all the ticket scalping and things of that nature. I'd rather make sure that the band that I want to see is getting their $100 or $200 versus me giving $600 to someone else that's trying to be an intermediary and sell a ticket that they bought back in the day and not going to go see the show, and pocketing that difference that the artist should probably be receiving and not that scalper.
Yeah, because you definitely want them to bring out more music and have more vinyl that we can purchase and do more shows so we can see those type of things. But you're absolutely right. It does get to be pricey, and some of those apps, they will help you to get those last minute seats, but you do have to be careful too. I went to go see U2, bought one of the tickets through one of the apps, got up to DC, and then I was having trouble. They wanted me to print the ticket off. I couldn't use my phone. Every other time you can use your phone. And then they switched the tickets on me, and I didn't know where I was going to be sitting, and I was all amped up before the show, and I really couldn't even enjoy the show because I was like wondering where I was going to sit, where they were moving me, all this kind of stuff, because I had used, the app, and I'd never had a problem up until that point, until that U2 show. Right. But that was really like eye-opening too. So you just have to be careful. Still support those bands that you want to see, man. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Definitely keep you and your wife in mind when we're doing some of those shows, and maybe we'll have to look and see Nick Mason together. And if Roger Waters is touring again, I know definitely my wife will be there, and so we could all check those things out. So definitely, if you see anything worth going to, and if I see anything, we should definitely hook up and try to go, even if it's out of town.
Absolutely. I will definitely keep you guys in mind.
That sounds good. I'll do the same. So we're going to talk about musical purchases now, and I think you might be able to answer all of these. So basically I usually just ask what was your first music purchase, but I think you might be able to do vinyl, tape, CD, and stream.
Yeah, possible, and maybe even 8-track if I want to date myself.
Yeah, do 8-track as well.
8-track purchase. I probably have about 2 or 3 8-tracks hanging around here. The one that I remember purchasing, and I just bought it on a whim, was a copy of Kiss Dynasty on an 8-track. I don't even have an 8-track player, but I have an 8-track tape laying around here somewhere. Just bought that just because, I've always loved Kiss as a fan. And yeah, it was there. It was cheap. Had to have it. I've bought all kind of other things along the way. Probably one of the first purchases I bought on LP myself was probably a copy of Adam and the Ants, Kings of the Wild Frontier. If you loved them back in the day in the early 80s. Gotta love Ant music. CDs were really big when I was getting into early part of high school. Everyone wanted to have a CD player. So I just can't remember just the first CD purchase. At one time, I was trying to complete everything from cassette tapes over to CDs because supposedly it sounded better and no one wanted a vinyl. And at the end of the day, I truly think that vinyl is where it is. I just always have loved the format, being able to hold something in your hands, looking at the artwork on the big 12 by 12 picture and just opening up and holding stuff. The only time I really buy things on, say, digital download would be if it's something that's very limited and it's not available in a physical format. Occasionally I'll download something from Apple Music or, Amazon or wherever it happens to be. But, it's very few and far between. And it has to definitely be something that I just cannot buy a physical copy of. Because ultimately, if you send me a computer file or I get a computer file from somewhere else, that's exactly what it is. It's just a computer file. I'm one of those guys that's kind of old school, and if I ever go to a concert or somewhere and I happen to be lucky to be backstage or be able to meet an artist, I want to be able to say, hey, I have this that I purchased from you, and can you sign it? And you just can't do that with a digital download. I'm a physical media kind of guy.
Well, that is true. And Adam Ant has come up on the show before. How did you get into Adam Ant, if I could ask?
Being as a kid, I was an Air Force brat. My dad lived here, there, and everywhere. Before we moved back to the States, right before the start of, I'd say, 5th, 6th grade, I was a young British kid. Well, actually, I was an American kid living in England, but I still talked with that Harry Potter British accent. And Adam and the Ants were coming out on the scene, and they were all over Top of the Pop. Saw them on TV, and I just kind of loved the sound. I loved the, somewhat, what do you call that, glam pirate look. And it was just a good beat. I loved the music, and I've loved them ever since. And then after they broke up, and when Adam did the solo stuff, it's just still good music, good pop music. Can't complain.
That's got to be really cool. The last time it came up, was because of MTV, but you're on the other side of the pond there. And it came up on Top of the Pops. You've seen that documentary on I Want My MTV on MTV. They talk about a lot of videos, they weren't doing except for promotions. But Britain, they had videos because of Top of the Pops, and they were playing those all over MTV. And that's where you got that second British invasion. So you were across the pond witnessing the other side of that.
Absolutely. And then coming back to the States and then MTV launching, it was pretty cool.
So what kind of bands besides Adam Ant did you get over there besides him? What other artists were you getting over there across the pond?
I really remember a thing that, stands out distinctly in my mind. I always remember it to this day. I must have been in about 3rd or 4th grade in England, and I was living on base. And we had this big recreational area for the kids, field, with slides, swing sets, and all that good stuff. And we were all hanging out there as young kids. I couldn't have been more than 6, 7, 8 years old at the most. And we're all hanging around, swinging on the swings. Some of the older kids came by. And, when I say older kids, they could have been more than 13 or 14. And they had some big old, jam blasters, playing their music. And that was the first time at that age that I heard AC/DC. And hearing AC/DC on the swing set, being that young, and, that was a really good time. I really got into that sort of music because of things like that. And then mentioned earlier, my dad's influence with the classic rock bands, Deep Purple, Hendrix, that sort of stuff. Then the newer stuff with AC/DC coming in. So it was really good times.
So, man, you just had an eclectic mix of music from across the pond, hanging out with your dad in the classic rock, and then the type of vinyl you collect is a good chunk of stuff too, because I've seen some of it, that I've purchased for you. Talk a little bit about some of the latest vinyl stuff that you've maybe picked up, just to give us a little bit of a difference in that, Top of the Pop scene and the AC/DC. See where else we can take it.
Yeah, as I mentioned, my vinyl collection, and as well as just my regular music collection, period, it just really spans from the left to the right and everywhere in between. I'm primarily classic rock type of guy, 70s rock, 80s rock, heavy metal type stuff. That's my main focus. I love my classic metal. I love my Iron Maiden. I love my Motorhead, all those good stuff, AC/DC. But I also respect all the old, early stuff, anything everything from the early 60s, from the Beatles, the Stones, the Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, of course. Led Zeppelin's amazing. Old Black Sabbath, all that stuff. And then I really appreciate, 80s pop music, Adam and the Ants. I love Pat Benatar, the Bangles, everything in between, the Runaways. Country music, I love it too. But my country music tastes tend to be a little bit more towards the older classic type country. I prefer Johnny Cash's and Willie Nelson's and things of that nature. I do like some of the newer country stuff. I'm a big Toby Keith fan, Alan Jackson, that sort of stuff. But when we start to get to some of the newer country, what I refer more to this as the pop country or the crossover stuff, not that big of a fan. Comes to, say, rap music, I'm more of an 80s traditionalist type guy when it comes to rap music. Public Enemy, Beastie Boys, Beastie, Ice Cube, the classic stuff. Once you start getting into newer rap stuff that's anything past, say, 95 into the 2000s, I'm out of my element. I just don't know, and it's just not something I'm really focused on. Everything else, I'm there. I'll be listening to one moment to something like Tori Amos, then I'll be going to Deep Purple, and then after that I'm putting on a country tune. It just really depends on what my mood is. I have music here in my house for every sort of thing, even classical stuff. Spanish flamenco guitar. Love it.
That's the reason why I had you on the show, because I know you're eclectic just like I'm eclectic. I once went into the record store and bought a Snoop Doggy Dogg and a Harry Connick Jr. at the same time. And they looked at me and is this for a gift? Funny. Yeah, they looked at me funny. Is this for a gift? And I'm like, no, this is for me.
Yeah, they either think that you're buying gifts or you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they start to quiz you on the music. It's like, are you really listening to this? Is this for you? And I'm like, yeah, it's for me. I'm buying Harry Connick Jr. and I'm buying Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, that person that asked me those questions is younger than me. I try to turn the tables on them and say, and where were you in 1987 when this came out? And they're like, huh? No, I was at the show. So let me buy my album and I'm going to go home.
Like you, I'm not a big country music fan, or at least I thought I wasn't a big country music fan. And I don't know if you've seen that documentary by Ken Burns about country music, but in watching that documentary, I'm like, I'm a country music fan. I might as well just admit it. I'm an old school, new school country music fan, and the roots of that music it really taps into Americana.
Yeah, definitely.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. So hang on.
Influence with DJ Johnny Bravo.
We are back. I'm Johnny Bravo. You're going under the musical influence of today's guest, Brian Belt, on Under the Influence with DJ Johnny Bravo. What's your favorite song? Give that artist, band, or group and the song title.
That's a tough one. It just really depends on the day of the week, whenever, what's going on, this and that. There's just so much music out there. But if I just had to pick, just one song or something of that, or just one band, the band that's always got me through life is Iron Maiden. They're my number one band. I live, worship, breathe what they do. Huge fan, mega fan, uber fan, whatever you want to call it. The one song that they've done that always just gets me in the mood is probably The Trooper. Probably overplayed a little bit. They have a lot better songs than that, and songs that are worse than that, but that would probably be the one song to mention.
So how many Iron Maiden albums do you own?
I have them all. I have all the studio recordings on vinyl as well as CD, and then I try to pick up all the singles if I can, and I have all the little tidbits here and there. It's really insane. If my wife knew what I really had, she'd try to sell it all on the eBay, so she doesn't need to know what I have.
And in all your travels, did you ever see Iron Maiden live?
I have seen Iron Maiden live numerous times. I've seen them probably, I would say not every year they've toured, but almost every other year. So it's probably the band I've seen most live in my lifetime. Probably 14, 15 concerts at least, if not more. And numerous times backstage hanging out with them, and then some personal activity hanging out we're actually with the band members and picking them up from hotel rooms and all that good stuff and everything in between.
So name like maybe 2 or 3 of your favorite Iron Maiden shows. Where were they? Maybe if you can remember the tour or the album they were touring off of.
One of the best shows that I've ever seen from Iron Maiden, and I've seen, as I mentioned, I've seen them multiple times. One show that really sticks out was the Brave New World tour that happened. And that was back in the day after Bruce Dickinson, the second lead singer, left the band, and he came back to the band after almost a 10-year hiatus. It was about 8 years or so, but they played 2 shows back to back in San Antonio over Labor Day weekend, September 3rd and September 4th. And I went to both of those shows, and both nights got backstage passes and hung out with the band and had a real good time. Queensryche opened both of those shows, and it was a great time. I'll never forget that.
That's got to be a special memory. So the next question I normally ask in these range of questions is, what's your favorite band? But you've already answered that. Did you want to add any band to that? Sometimes I'll put an S behind it. So if you want to talk more about any other favorite songs or any of your other favorite bands, and I know we've talked a little bit about it, but if you had to pick is that your favorite band, or did you, is there, there's no number 2? Iron Maiden is it?
If you had to say you could only pick one band to live on that desert island with and take their catalog with you, that would have to be it. My number 2 band in the metal scene would be Motorhead. Lemmy and Motorhead, phenomenal. Way before their time. I wouldn't even really classify them truly as a true heavy metal band. I would just say a very straightforward hard rock band. That's what they always called themselves. Anything from Motorhead, and amazing. And I also had that opportunity one time in my life to meet Lemmy and all that before his passing. That was a cool time too, backstage with him.
This is something that we didn't talk about before, just so people out there in the Under the Influence land knows. I send out the show prep, and I don't get the show prep back, so I have no idea what we're going to talk about before the show. They know what they're going to talk about because I try to get them a little bit of prep time. And I had no idea that Motorhead was going to be one of the things that we talked about tonight. When I promoted you recording of the podcast, I used the song on Instagram, Motorhead, for you. So a song by Motorhead.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're on Instagram. I think I tagged your wife in it, but I did use Motorhead as the song. And I had no idea that we were even going to talk about Motorhead tonight. So I just think that is so cool.
Awesome.
And all the bands, and not only do you have a first favorite and a second favorite, but all these bands that you've gotten to see all across the United States and that you've met. I mean, that is just so awesome. I mean, there's some people that don't even get a chance to even go to one show or to meet that one band or artist that they're in love with. And you and I have both had, that opportunity to do that. And other people on the show have done the same thing. Express how that feels when you go and hang out with that band that you love for the first time, or that person, that artist that you meet for the first time, just hanging out with them.
First and foremost, I feel very lucky and blessed that I've been able to see who I've been able to see and meet whoever I've been able to meet. I've met so many artists over the course of the last 35 years or so that I could spend multiple podcasts with you talking about those. Big story is that, I feel very blessed to be able to be in the right place in the right time, to be able to see who I've seen and meet who I've met and be able to hang out with those individuals, whether it be, like I mentioned, Iron Maiden or Lemmy or Dio or any of the other rock artists that I've seen and met, through the course of my life. I even had the opportunity once to see Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons that just showed up at my place of work when I was working in the movie theater. I saw them the night before. They showed up in the limo and wanted to see a movie, so I helped them out and got them into a movie. The big thing is you have to, enjoy things, take things with a grain of salt and make sure that you're in the right place in the right time. Not worry about being rejected and being saying no. It's probably harder now to get in to see someone backstage than it was back in the day, but persistence is the key. And also knowing a few people, talk to your local DJs, talk to your local people that are promoting shows. If you're active in the music scene, it opens up doors for you. And next thing you know, you're hanging out with those artists that you'd like to meet, and you can ask those specific questions and talk talk to them and get to know them a little bit more beyond their music. And it's just an amazing, amazing experience.
Now, before we get into this last question, I wanted to ask you one other question I meant to ask you a little bit ago. We normally ask when we do what your favorite song is, or, your stream or, vinyl or whatever. And we like to talk about the local record store. And I know you've visited all over the United States. So do you want to give out a shout out to some of your record stores that you went to in the United States and the ones closest to home?
Well, I have a soft spot for the record store that I used to work for. That was back in the 90s, and that company no longer exists. That was Sound Warehouse. But what I really love is the local record stores that are available in our area now. And here in the Virginia Beach area, I'm very happy with Vinyl Days, AFK, as well as Birdland Records. You've been out there before. Any sort of local record store where you can actually walk in to talk to somebody who knows the music, can talk to you and make recommendations for you about, well, maybe you like this, but maybe you should listen to some of this. But if you really like so-and-so, if you haven't heard of this person, that's where you meet people, network, you get to learn new music, and that's truly what it's all about. So, I enjoy going to places up in your area like Plan 9. I always get upset when record store places close. The big thing is to keep it real, keep it local. Get out there and buy your vinyl, buy your used CDs if you're buying used or whatever you're buying. Just, make sure that you're supporting that local business. That's what it's all about. That's what's going to keep everything and the music thing going forward.
Yeah, you mentioned some great record stores. I know my wife has been in line with you at Birdland for Record Store Day. I know your wife has gotten me some of my Record Store Day purchases at AFK. And I know you've been up here to Plan 9, and, you talk about stores that are closing, like Steady Sounds was one of the ones that closed up here. That was a great record store.
That hurt me.
Yeah, I mean, they had a great dollar section upstairs, a big dollar section, and their records were like $5, $8, $12, $20. Most of them, I don't think, went over $20.
Yeah, take a chance on any record for $1.
Yeah, exactly. And I've gotten some really good ones. For $1, I got the Bee Gees Greatest Hits that still had the inserts from where you could order the stuff from their 1975 concert in it. And I got a Billy Joel, the one from Russia, the Kudopago or whatever however you say that, the live version with the red cover. I got that for $1. And I think I even got Billy Joel's Greatest Hits for $1. So, I mean, they had just a whopping collection of dollar records. Deep Groove is a good record store. And I visited another place out here, Wax Moon, that is really cool place that you'll have to come check out with me. They definitely have some cool stuff. Yeah.
Next time I'm off there at your neck of the woods, I will definitely go with you.
You ready for the finale?
Well, I guess so. Let's go.
All right, here we go. How has music impacted your life?
Music makes the world go round. Without music, it's going to be a dull, dull place. For my highs and my lows and whatever's been going on in my life, music always gets me through. So that's basically where I'm at. You can always have a different job, different thing going on in your life, but you can always relate back to where were you at in that certain day of your life? What were you listening to when you were 15 or 25 or 30? What was that last great show that you went to? It makes and secures those memories, so that's why it's so important in my life, and I hope you feel the same way, and it's an important part of yours as well.
In my notes that I send everyone, paint that picture. And really, you painted a great picture of your love of music, your collection and where the collection's held, and the love of vinyl and the resurgence of vinyl and supporting your local community, supporting your local bands. All of those things are just so, so important. Just putting on that vinyl and listening continuously to it going and spinning is nothing like it. And you had to go, some of them you have to go over and flip over to side 2. Some of them automatically flip, but it's such a great thing that just takes us back to those memories, that it's painting that picture for us when we were 15 or 10 or 9, or that concert or that dance with the girl at the show or at the party or whatever. It's just such a great thing that we can all kind of get around the table and talk about. So I'm glad that you're able to do that today.
Absolutely. Well, it's been my pleasure. I'd love to talk to you again at any time you want, and just let me know, and I'll be here for you, DJ Johnny Bravo.
Well, I definitely appreciate it, and maybe I will take you up on that. Maybe we'll do, where we'll just talk about the concerts you've been to. I'm sure we could probably do a whole show based off of that, so maybe that's something that we could get together and do, because I would be interested in seeing what shows you went to back in the day, besides the ones we talked about today.
Yeah, absolutely. Just let me know. We'll put up a list and we can have some further discussions. It'll be my pleasure to help you out.
Thanks so much, Brian. Thanks for going under the musical influence of today's guest, Brian Belt, on Under the Influence with DJ Johnny Bravo. Go under the influence on Instagram at DJJONNIBRAVO _ under the influence. That's DJJONNIBRAVO _ under the influence. Please subscribe to Under the Influence with DJ Johnny Bravo where you listen to your podcasts. I'm Johnny Bravo. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
No longer under the influence with DJ Johnny Bravo. Until next week.